Good evening, everyone. We were trying to wait for a few minutes until all the cars cleared 27 that were coming in, and I think we've got most of them in now. And first of all, before we get started, I'd like to introduce Mr. Harold Reddy, who is the head of Vanguard School, and I'd like for him to come and welcome everyone here this evening.
Good evening. How's everybody tonight? Are you excited about finding out all the information about charter schools? Huh? I'm almost in my 50th year of education, and I've seen the whole gamut of working in public education as a principal. I used to be a principal at Roosevelt. I went to be a principal at McKeel. I established the first secondary charter school, conversion charter school, and then I did a presentation a little over 15 years ago, Robin, at the Chamber of Commerce about charter schools. And then Robin took over from there and kept on going with it. So it's very neat to have all of you here and inviting you here on a private school campus. And Vanguard is a 6 through 12 boarding school for males and females. And we're very proud. It's a very diverse population. We represent 16 different countries at this school. And if you ever get a chance, come by and take a visit. You're more than welcome. But on behalf of the board, I welcome you tonight. Thank you.
We're going to have everyone stand, please, for an invocation and for the pledge. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much this evening for giving us this opportunity to stand and to deliver to the citizens, not only of Lake Wales, but in the surrounding areas, the information that they've been seeking. And Father, we just pray that everything that's said and done here this evening will be to your glory. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. As I said, I thank everyone who has come this evening seeking answers. First of all, I would like to introduce our panel. For the Polk County side, we have Mr. John Hill, Deputy Superintendent, Polk County Schools. We have Mr. Lynn Wilson, Polk County Chair Board. And we have, Dr. Michael Akes is, oh, he made it. Okay, great. Dr. Michael Akes, Chief Academic Officer, and Ms. Carolyn Bridges, Senior Director of Office of Innovation and Acceleration. And on the other end of the table, we have, from the Lake Wales Charter System, we have Mr. Jimmy Nelson, Lake Wales Charter School Board Chair. We have Dr. Jesse Jackson, Lake Wales Charter School Superintendent, and Mr. Robin Gibson, Esquire, Lake Wales Charter Legal Counsel. And also, we have Ms. Donna Dunson, who's the principal of Lake Wales High School. And I hope I did not miss anyone in that introduction. Thank you. First of all, housekeeping details. If you're looking for restrooms, the ladies' restroom would be on this side, and the men's restroom will be over here. But when you go out these doors, they'll probably lock on you, so you'll have to come back around to the center to get back in. All right. The city of Lake Wales, to show you how we got here, the city of Lake Wales was asked for a proclamation in support of the Lake Wales Charter Schools being part of a contingency plan to assume responsibility for running Mclaughlin Middle School in the event that Mclaughlin does not receive a C or higher grade this year. The Lake Wales City Commission voted 4-1 to table the action until the public has had an opportunity to hear the proposal. This forum is a result of those actions. The forum is intended to be a vehicle used by Polk County Schools and the Lake Wells Charter Schools to inform the public about the discussions that have transpired between both parties on the possibility of Mclaughlin Middle School coming under the Lake Wells Charter system. After a brief presentation, there will be a Q&A session on items submitted prior to this event. Questions submitted during the event will be reviewed to prevent duplication and to assure appropriateness. If you need a form to fill out for questions that you might want to ask, raise your hand, and we have someone out there that will come to you. Mr. Fields, he will come to you and he will give you a slip that you may write that question on, and it will be delivered up here to the stage. There will be space for both sides to talk about the future of Spook Hill Elementary and Roosevelt Academy in the event the charter school system has a desire to have a citywide charter system. Understand that the city is hosting this forum with me as the moderator, but the city has not taken a stand on any of these issues. All information provided and decisions made will be strictly between the two school systems. The city will not voice an opinion at this forum. Before the city lends support, one way or the other, there will be more discussion at the January 15th City Commission meeting at 6 p.m. The public is invited to come and voice your thoughts and opinions at that time. At this time, we'll hear an update from the Polk County school system on Mclaughlin Middle School. And afterwards, we will hear from Mr. Jimmy Nelson, the chairman of the Lake Wells Charter School Board. Our update? Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Akes. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the School District of Polk County. I'd like to ask Ms. Pat Barnes to join me up here, and we'll talk about the work that's been done at Mclaughlin Middle School and the forward progress that we continue to see there. As you know, Mclaughlin Middle School is being supported by the district, by Educational Directions as an external operator, and also supported through the Florida Department of Education. Ms. Barnes is our regional assistant superintendent who works directly with Ms. Donna Drisdom, the principal. We're continuing to see steady progress at that school, and I'd like Ms. Barnes to tell you about the number of support visits that have been at that school and what we got going on.
Thank you, Dr. Akes. So good evening. We currently have in excess of 80 support visits that have happened at Lake Wells Middle School this year, Fine Arts Academy. Those would be in the realm primarily of district regional coaching support. We have state coaching support. We have our outside entity lead coaches coming in and supporting as well. Naturally, we have regional support with myself. We have mentors coming in from the I3 program to help with our teachers. That's just on the support side that I would say is a little bit above what we've had happening in the past. We've seen tremendous results as it relates to those coaching opportunities. And we feel that Mclaughlin is really thriving as a result from that additional support.
When we look at the academic gains that's going on at that school, the principal and the support that's been described to you, we're seeing a steady increase of the academic performance as progress monitored by both the STAR Reading, STAR Math, and the district quarterly assessments. I am really affirmed by the work of Ms. Donna Drisdom and her staff. I've never seen a group of teachers and students work so hard and really commit themselves to improving a community school. So when we look at the academic piece of it and the measurement piece of it, they're continuing to see growth across all areas. and we see implementation of both our reading program and our math program is implemented with fidelity there. So without hesitation, I am very confident in the school grade becoming a C this year.
All right. Thank you very much.
Just briefly, I want to thank you all for that update. It's evident the effect that the efforts at Mclaughlin and Ms. Trisdom and her team are having there, and we as a community we are very grateful. We're grateful to the administrators there, and we're thankful for the district and the effort that is going in there as well. So for my part of this, I've got about a 3.5-minute opening statement, and then I've got 11 PowerPoint slides that we're going to go through. It'll take about an hour and a half. Yeah, actually about 9 or 10 minutes. So hopefully you can bear that. And I'd like to start with my personal experience with Lake Wales Schools, which you have to go back to Hillcrest, which is where it began. After Hillcrest, I caught the bus from Jeff Stinger's house on Campbell Avenue to get to Janie Howard Wilson School, which is where I attended 4th and 5th grade. And I cannot think about my experience at Janie Howard Wilson School without thinking about something that happened during my 5th grade year there. It was November 12th of 1975. I was 1 month short of my 11th birthday, and when I got home that day, something wasn't right. I was a paper boy for the Daily Highlander. Some in this room may remember that. The Daily Highlander, I mean. And unlike any other regular day, my stack of papers was not waiting for me on the doorstep when I got home. They were not there that day because while I was at school, my mother had been taken hostage at her place of work at Indian Lake Estates. She was the story on the front page of the Daily Highlander that day. A man who was running from police for having already murdered 3 people ran into my mom's office, wielding the machete he had used to kill the other 3 people, and barricaded himself and my mother in a filing cabinet room for what turned out to be an 18-hour standoff with police. Thankfully, and I think miraculously, the man ultimately surrendered himself without killing himself or my mother, which he had threatened to do throughout the entire day. What does this have to do with Janie Howard Wilson School, you might ask? Well, my homeroom teacher in the 5th grade was Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson was strict. She held her students to a high standard, and I had a very healthy fear of her. The day that I returned to school, though, Mrs. Johnson lovingly called me to the front of the room, embraced me, called the rest of the class to gather around, and they prayed for my mother, for me, and my family. That moment still affects me to this day. I never cease to be astounded by the impact that educators have on the students they teach. It's a very meaningful testament to those of you who have chosen education as your profession, and I'm here this evening to thank you for that. After Janie Howard Wilson School, I walked from our new home on Bullard Avenue to Polk Avenue School to catch the bus that took me to Roosevelt School, where I attended the 6th grade. I remember how teachers at Polk Avenue School actually waited for those of us that were going to Janie Howard Wilson. They waited with us at the bus stop there, even though we weren't attending their school, something that I'm pretty sure Gail Quam would make sure happened today, if that were the case. After Roosevelt, my parents allowed me to ride my bicycle to attend 7th and 8th grade at Lake Wales Junior High School, which is now Mclaughlin Middle School. And then from Lake Wales Junior High School, it was on to be part of one of the earliest 9th grade classes to attend what was then the new Lake Wales Senior High School. That was almost 40 years ago. For Jennifer Barrow, it was 40 years ago. Although I don't think she's here. So what's the point of all of that? Almost every public school in this town has had an impact on my life. And every one of them are still very dear to me. That is the heart with which I approach my position as the board chair for our charter school system. It's the heart with which I approach this evening's forum, and the heart with which I approach discussions with the Polk County School Board. I and those of us here that represent Lake Wales Charter Schools are not here under any presumption. We offer no presumption, and we're not here to impose ourselves upon anyone. We see some unintended outcomes that have occurred as our local school system has evolved over the last 15 years. We see that our relationship with the district now seems to be based more on mistrust and enmity than trust and cooperation. We acknowledge the concerns of our community, which wants to see those unintended outcomes in our relationship with the district remedied. It is my hope that this evening's discussion will be seen as a proposal and an effort towards remedy. It is my hope that this leads to avoiding what I personally believe is a potentially worse situation in the not-too-distant future. So with that, I'm just going to step down so I can see the slides a little bit better. And Z, if you don't mind, go ahead and advance. So for the next few minutes, this is kind of my outline. There'll be a brief overview. I just want to review the Lake Wales Charter School mission statement, talk about what I see as an impending excess capacity issue that we have, a bit about Mclaughlin turnaround status and contingency plan, which we've heard about, and then there will be opportunity to answer questions that we've received, and we'll try to do our best to answer those. Next slide, please. So there are some overriding concerns that are actually shared by the Lake Wales Charter Schools and the district. They are Lake Wales students being unable to attend in Lake Wales, having been displaced by students from outside of Lake Wales. We've heard that from parents in Lake Wales very loudly and clearly. Also, students from district schools outside of Lake Wales attending inside Lake Wales and the effect that that has. 864 students that the district is having to bus outside of Lake Wales, which they tell me very clearly that is not something that's desirable to them and obviously very expensive. Collaboration between the charter schools and the district to resolve an undercapacity issue via approval of the Bach North Charter, which the district approved for us, thankfully, has led to what I see as an impending excess capacity issue now. And then again, relative to Mclaughlin Middle School, I've got a few points about that coming up. Next slide, please. So if you go to the mission statement for the Lake Wales Charter School, it reads, to bring the best of public education to our community. And our community is defined as the original Lake Wales High School attendance zone. Next slide, please. So I don't know how well you can see this, but this is essentially a zip code map of the Lake Wales area. There's a red line that's emboldened, and you can see that the eastern boundary is about Kissimmee River. The southern boundary is about Frostproof. The western boundary is about Alturas, and the northern boundary is about Dundee. When I was going to school, everybody knew that that was where people in Lake Wales went to school. And Mr. Gibson, thankfully, had this map handy for this slide. Next slide, please. From an excess capacity standpoint, as I mentioned, presently, with the 3 middle schools that are authorized for Lake Wales, Mclaughlin, Bach Academy, and the new Bach North Academy, 2,381 students have been authorized for our attendance zone. In our attendance zone, there's an estimated 1,400 middle school age students residing in Lake Wales, in the Lake Wales attendance zone area, leaving over 900 potential vacancies for students from outside of Lake Wales. And the reason that that's critical is because it's our view that out-of-town students have a statutory right under charter laws to fill those vacancies. And as far as I see it, a failure to address this issue now could inevitably lead to an exacerbation of the issues that have plagued us to this point. Next slide, please. So, we as a charter system have submitted to the district a proposal for discussion and hopefully to bring us together to potentially come to a remedy. And that memorandum of understanding, which is currently just a draft, that's all it is, it's very much a work in progress. Nothing has been determined about it. We haven't even, gotten together in any form of negotiation. It is simply an idea. To manage our enrollment. Careful management of enrollment capacity can guarantee seats for Lake Wales students, a big concern for parents in Lake Wales, and help to alleviate concerns of district schools outside of the Lake Wales attendance zone. Accomplishing this in compliance with state statute requires a joint effort between the charter schools and the district. Quite honestly, we can't do it as individual entities. We have to do it together. The statute essentially forces that. That's our view. And the statute is referenced there. From an inflow standpoint, the district and the charter schools can significantly reduce excess capacity by merging Bach North Academy with Mclaughlin as a conversion charter under the statute referenced in the Mclaughlin facility under the Bach North charter. By the way, if we did that, we would reduce that 900 excess capacity by about 600 seats. The district and the charter are permitted by state statute to together, and not only permitted but pretty much required, to together set enrollment caps in a charter contract. And it is a contractual thing. Next slide, please. From an outflow standpoint, the charter schools should heavily recruit local school families in Lake Wales feeder schools for applications to roll to Lake Wales schools. Again, going back to the days when I was in school, the system was very seamless. I knew exactly what my next school was going to be. And when I completed the school that I was in, I went right to the next one. I think that there's something that we've lost in that regard in our community. That's one of the unintended consequences. Applications should be simple, equivalent to paperwork required for enrollment at a district school. Lake Wales Charter Schools keeps struggling students and ESE students. Those of you that have submitted questions, this is a recurring question. We have no intention whatsoever to displace any student, let alone ESE students. We would hopefully see that the district would no longer have to bus Lake Wales students out of town. I think everybody agrees on that. There are exceptions to that. Specialty programs such as Harrison, Don Woods, and et cetera. And then some of the concern that I've heard in my discussions with the district has to be with compulsory related students, and there's a discussion and the possibility that the charter school could be designated for that. Next slide, please. So relative to, really, this was kind of the impetus to this whole discussion, was the turnaround status for Mclaughlin relative to its grade. And before I go any further, again, I just want to voice as I have, everybody in this town is pulling for Mclaughlin. We don't care that it's not part of our charter. Ms. Drisdom and your staff and those students, we want to see you make a C or better absolutely this year. And we wish you the very best of luck. And we want to do what we can as well to support that. So, statutorily, when that occurs, the district has a number of options, and I have them listed. Convert the school to a district-managed turnaround school, reassign students to another school and monitor the progress of each reassigned student. I can't imagine trying to do that. Option 3, close the school and reopen the school as one or more charter schools, each with a governing board with demonstrated effectiveness. In this case, Lake Wales Charter Schools would qualify for that. Or contract option 4 with an outside entity that has demonstrated record of effectiveness to operate the school, which we heard just a few moments ago by Dr. Akes that educational directions is the entity that the county has retained to help them with the turnaround not only of Mclaughlin, but other schools within the county. And so they are working with them for that. And then option 5, implement a hybrid of turnaround options set forth in subparagraphs of the statute. I encourage you not to try to read that. Next slide, please. So again, obviously our position is that with all deference to educational directions and the job that the district is doing supporting Mclaughlin, obviously our view is that a school-wide system in Lake Wales is good for everybody, is best for everybody. We are local folks. I don't know that you can get any more local than having attended almost every school that the town has. That's who we are on our board. That's who we are. As a charter school system, we would indeed welcome Mclaughlin into our charter, but for all of the right reasons. And we think that it's an awfully good idea, again, for everyone concerned, including the district and the responsibility that they bear. I don't know how many schools are in the district, but you all have got your hands full, obviously. 100 and how many? 50. God bless you. And I mean that very sincerely. And again, with the memorandum of understanding, we would want to employ the points of the memorandum of understanding as a part of that happen, if it were to happen. The reason I talked about this last was because, again, we hope that it's a moot point. We hope that when the grade comes out, that there's no more turnaround status required. We hope that these options that I've explained to you don't mean anything. But that doesn't mean that we still don't feel like Mclaughlin and the community would benefit by being a part of our charter system. And so the memorandum is put together with that in mind. And so we're here tonight to suggest that as far as the turnaround contingency plan is concerned, we would like to see what the board decided, what the school board decided in November, which is to have educational directions designated as the contingency entity. We would like to see that amended, and that is the request that we have before the school board. Beyond that, if it becomes moot, we think it's a good time in our community to have the discussion again together. 15 years ago, the teachers got together, the parents got together at Mclaughlin, decided against coming into our charter. We would like to have the discussion again. And perhaps if the administrators, the teachers and the parents at Mclaughlin think it's a good idea, we would welcome that discussion with you. Next slide, please. I think that's, from a financial standpoint, we think that it makes a lot of sense as well. I know that this is difficult to see. On the left side, there is a number that the Lakeland Ledger reported that the school district is paying educational directions. The number on the screen is $862,000. That includes the work that they're doing for all of the schools, as long as I understand that correctly, not just Mclaughlin. Mclaughlin would be some portion of that. Whatever that portion is, the district would be able to redirect those resources elsewhere. We are also very fortunate that we have very generous folks in Lake Wales who support us and support our foundation. There is a potential, due to the generosity of those types of folks and with startup funds from the federal government, that $1.8 million could be brought to bear for the benefit of Mclaughlin. So again, from a financial standpoint, we think that it makes a lot of sense as well. Next slide, I think maybe that does it. That gets us into the questions. I'm going to turn it back over to the mayor, and with that, my part is over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. We appreciate it. And hopefully you got something out of that, that those were conversations and discussions that went on between the two entities, and no one else that was in the center of that. And let me regress, first of all, and say that I forgot to tell everyone to silence or turn off their cell phones, but I haven't heard any of them ring, so thank you for doing that on your own. And I also forgot to thank the rest of the board, the Polk County School Board of Directors for being here, and leadership from the county that has come to listen and participate in this forum. And we also thank the rest of the charter school leadership that has come as well, because this is a very important topic that we're looking at. Now, it is time for Q&A. The questions that came in ahead of time are the ones that will be read first of all. Now, there were some that came in on the website, and I may as well go ahead and start with those. The ones that came in on the website, Mclaughlin Middle School ESE students. Mclaughlin is the only public middle school on the eastern part of Polk County, Haines City, Dundee, Winter Haven, and Lake Wales, with detailed ESE help. A third of the student population is McKay transfers from ESE help. All other public middle schools on Eastern County are turnaround schools, choice, magnet, private, and charter, and do not have ESE opportunities, or very limited ones. Inclusion only where para-assistant is in classroom. Mclaughlin has reading coaches, assistive technology teachers specializing in academic disabilities, various ESE support classes, inclusion, and self-contained. What about these students? What about the ESE students? As far as the charter system is concerned, and I'm pretty sure that's what was asked.
So yes, sir, you want a response to that at this time?
Yeah, I think part of it, I think you all have to respond because you set up whatever parameters you have within your schools, you set those parameters up. We didn't set those parameters up as to what students would be served by a particular school in Polk County. So I think you probably, and we can certainly respond from a Lake Wales charter school standpoint, but I think it really...
Can I clarify that question? Could I ask for some clarification of the question? Mayor Polk, some clarification?
Come on.
I guess the question I would have, in clarifying that question, is are we talking about students who are coming from outside of Lake Wales? Will they continue to be served at Mclaughlin? Is that the essence of the question?
Schools that are currently there. Students that are currently there. Students that are currently in those schools.
So, are you going to speak?
No, except again, to clarify the question, I mean, if based on the way it was framed, it sounds to me like Mclaughlin is one of the few schools on the east part of the county, maybe the only one, that has special accommodations for ESE students. And the question I think that I heard was, would they continue to serve those students even if they weren't from Lake Wales? I believe that's what I heard. That's why I'm asking. I'm wondering if we should clarify that.
And that's what I was hearing as well, more or less. What would happen to those ESE students that are currently at Mclaughlin if Mclaughlin went charter? What would happen to those ESE students?
So there are really two different issues embedded in that question, because as was noted, you have choice schools, magnet schools. You have a variety of schools on this side of the county, but those schools, according to what the question is suggesting, don't necessarily serve children with disabilities. all of the Lake Wales charter schools serve children with disabilities. We don't have any schools that do not serve children with disabilities. So that's a different issue. What I was suggesting earlier in determining who could respond to that question, whatever arrangements exist within a school, whether it's choice or otherwise, there's someone that sets those parameters as to what children are going to be served within those schools. And we don't set those parameters for the district schools. The district set, if they have a special location for a particular program that they're going to offer, the district set that up there. We don't set that up there. But to answer the question from a charter school standpoint, we, as an LEA, we serve children with disabilities. We're required to serve. We receive federal funds. We're required to serve children with disabilities. And so we don't have a choice to not serve children with disabilities.
All right, and hopefully that question was answered well enough for whoever sent this question in to get a good feel about it.
Yes, sir. If I could just clarify a couple of points there, maybe some misconceptions in the questions itself. It says a third of the student population is McKay transfers for ESE help. That's not accurate at all. Of the student body at Mclaughlin, only 15% of those students are students being served through ESE. So I'm not sure exactly. It may just have been a misconception by the person that actually worded the question. So I would just want to make sure that we're clear on that. And there's not a center school designation on Mclaughlin. It's a traditional middle school. And it's not accurate either that we have other middle schools along the eastern side that serve students with disabilities on a continuum of supports. So I think just making sure we're clear on that when we're looking at Mclaughlin, it's only 15%, which is the national average is around 14 or 15%, so it's hitting pretty close to that. And it does not have a center school designation. So when we're looking at that student population for the school district, that would be the students that are currently being served there.
And if I may just add very quickly, Dr. X, thank you so very much for those clarifications. That's extremely helpful. The intent relative to our proposal to the district is that the nature and the characteristics of Mclaughlin would not be affected in any regard. School of the Arts, ESE, any of those things. Our intent is that Mclaughlin would essentially remain intact the way that we know Mclaughlin today if it were to become part of the charter. That is the intent of the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I look forward, what are your intentions with Roosevelt Academy? Will you keep teachers and involve parents included in talks about Roosevelt Academy? As of now, no one, teachers or parents, has any idea what Roosevelt is, why Roosevelt is included in this meeting.
So I think I can maybe...
And that could be for either side, but I think more specifically for your side.
Sure. So, quite honestly, one of the reasons is that Roosevelt is very near and dear to the mayor's heart. And he has spoken on multiple occasions during the city commission meeting where the topic has come up that he wanted to make sure that all of the schools in Lake Wales are aware of this discussion, including those that are not part of the charter presently, Roosevelt and Spook Hill. And so we essentially invited everyone to be here to be informed. That's what this is about. We don't have any intention at the moment specific to Roosevelt other than to say we would hope at some point to see a unified school system in Lake Wales, which would include Roosevelt. And again, we're not here to impose ourselves, but if the teachers, administrators, parents of Roosevelt, the district, could want to engage that conversation, then that's really what this is about.
so separate from the request, because there were requests about whether Spook Hill or Roosevelt would be included, separate from those requests that recently came in, I actually, not just myself, but myself and Ms. Dunson, several years ago, at least 6 years ago, met with the principal of Roosevelt to have a conversation, really, to talk about partnering between Lake Wales High School and Roosevelt Academy on some specific academic vocational programming, because what we were seeing within the Lake Wales High School was that we needed to infuse more vocational programs. We knew that there were a number of vocational programs that existed within the Roosevelt School, and we met with the principal to ask if she was interested in us partnering together to work together on some of those programs, just to expand opportunities for vocation for children in our community. And we actually met twice with the principal, and she was not interested in that. And so nothing really came about as a result of that effort there. But the notion of vocational program in this Lake Wales community is a very important notion. And it's an important notion because if you were looking to see what are the job-related skills that local students gain by the time that they exit high school, it's very minimal. Now, we have increased those opportunities at Lake Wales High School, but I can recount a situation several years ago when they were building the Sunrise Complex, or rebuilding that complex. And I had had a conversation or two with the developers in talking about, could we get some local labor involved in that project? And his response was that, well, you don't have any skilled laborers. And so we had a meeting at B Street Center, invited local people, men, about 200 men showed up to this meeting to talk about what their skill capacities were for vocational kinds of things that would be in the construction area. Very few. We actually, from that, got some money through asking from that contractor, that company, got some money, and we started a construction apprenticeship program at the high school as a result of the generosity from that contractor, so that we could at least explore the possibility of trying to establish some construction-related skills for children in our community, because we just didn't have that. Now, we've increased those opportunities at Lake Wales High School, but the potential for having partnerships like that still exists, whether Roosevelt is a charter school or just a regular school. Why? Because the need for developing skills like that exists within the community. So,
Dr. Hicks, did you have something?
No, sir. It seems that that particular question is really more of a question toward the Lake Wales charter system. You know, we are very proud of the Roosevelt Academy. The students and staff there work hard every day, and their academic performance is increasing. And I think that, you know, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a group of educators and students that are more committed to that school. And I think that, you know, we would, that would be a different discussion with the school board.
All right. Let me first of all recognize Superintendent of Polk County School that just came in, Jacqueline Bird, and welcome, and thank you for being here this evening. All right, Mr. Gibson.
I want to agree with that last comment. I think we don't need to get too far afield here. The scope of this meeting is really Mclaughlin, and the question is how the two boards, the Board of Trustees of the charter schools representing the Lake Wales community and the school board representing Polk County as a whole, what are they going to do about this question of Mclaughlin? Mclaughlin is the only school with the turnaround status, and that narrows the scope of this meeting because for the first time, the school board has the unilateral authority to make a decision with regard to whether Mclaughlin would become a charter school. They don't have that authority with regard to Roosevelt or Spook Hill. It could happen, but it would be on another track, and it really would be the subject of another forum. So the real issue tonight is what is in the best interests of education, hopefully, for the community of Lake Wales. And because the school board has the unilateral authority to make that decision, then, and the charter school would welcome the opportunity, then that's the issue we're here to decide. And the choice is, do you want the operation of the school to be under an outside entity, an out-of-state entity, educational directions, or the Lake Wales charter schools? That's the choice. There really isn't any other choice, and really that's the subject of this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. You got a response? Yes, Dr. Yates.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate the candidness of the question and the response to it. Just for clarification, the contract that we've entered into with Educational Direction as an external operator, we work collaboratively with Educational Direction. The day-to-day operation of that school is under the direction of the principal, Ms. Donna Drisden. And I do appreciate the uniqueness of Lake Wales, the charter school system that it has established. And I know that for Lake Wales, you're talking about a community and a community with schools here. But I think there's a couple of points that we need to make, and it is in regard to the statute and maybe some misunderstandings that we maybe need to clarify. And I'm going to ask Ms. Bridges to kind of clarify a couple of questions on the statute as it pertains to the PowerPoint and what we see as the statute as it pertains to charter schools.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Gibson's comment that it was up to the school board. As you are well aware, the school board operates under a lot of direction from the State Board of Education, particularly when it comes to turnaround schools. And that particular process is governed, and I'll give you the number just as a reference. It's not exciting reading, but it does give you a reference. The State Board of Education has done a set of rules on differentiated accountability, and it is 1.099811. And when it talks about options for schools that are in turnaround status, one of the options it talks about is charter. And when it talks about charter, under that particular option, it says, ensure the district enters into a contract with a charter or multiple charters that have a record of turning around a high-poverty school serving low-performing students with similar demographics. So when the district takes this proposal to the state for approval, we have to demonstrate that the entity that we've selected has experience in turnaround work, which is a very specific set of work with demographics that reflect the demographics of the school. So we're looking at Mclaughlin Middle School, so we're looking for an entity that has experience doing turnaround work with middle schools that has resulted in success. And so when we take this to the state board, we have to demonstrate that the entity we're looking at has that track record of success. And while Lake Wales Charter Schools has a lot of successes, we've watched them over the years and we're delighted with the work you've done, there isn't turnaround work that specifically ties back to a middle school that would meet the requirements of these state accountability rules. So that's a concern that we need to be able to address, and that is a concern the district has with the proposal.
Got some great news for you. Just 2 years ago, perhaps, a year and a half ago, I was invited to Tallahassee to speak with the Commissioner of Education to consider taking over Jefferson County schools. Really, the only school that they have is a combination. Well, they have 2 schools, an elementary and a combination middle high school. And so I was invited there to talk with the commissioner and the choice office director, to see if Lake Wales Charter School was interested in taking over that particular school system, but really it's less than 800 kids in that whole system. And so we met and talked, and I met with their school board, and I met with people from the community, and eventually we backed out of that opportunity, principally because we were in the midst of trying to establish Bach North, and that was really taking our full attention. And so my point is very simple. For some reason, they deemed Lake Wales Charter School qualified to be able to take over that district, that school district, that really was principally a combination middle high school and a very small elementary school. And so for whatever their reasons were, we believe, I think, that we would qualify certainly for Mclaughlin Middle School.
Right. This particular statute with a set of directions and the criteria that came from the state board is this year's criteria. So we're looking at the new criteria and new requirements under the state accountability system.
So, I think that when we're looking at this and we've observed the particular charter school entities that would even be considered for this, the criteria we don't believe is met when we're looking at it. The other thing that I want to make sure that one point I need to make, and it really deals with being responsible and being advocates for all students. Mr. Jimmy and I had a discussion about this early in September. We started looking at the number of students and the demographics of the students that was actually leaving Lake Wales Charter. And we had a discussion, a very frank, open, honest discussion about it. And the data shows that a disproportionate number of ESE students are leaving Lake Wales Charter. A disproportionate number of minority students are leaving Lake Wales Charter. We discussed that in early September. We've again, at the middle of this year, pulled that same data, and that same trend continues. Since we've had that discussion and we come back here again tonight, there have been 60 students that have left Lake Wales Charter, and 24% of those students are ESE students. So a concern that I personally have as the Chief Academic Officer and an advocate for all students, when we talk about what role Mclaughlin plays in this particular community, it serves all students. And it's not a disproportionate number of ESE students. But as an advocate for all students and as the Chief Academic Officer that serves 105,000 students, when you talk about you're going to go into a school and that you're going to serve these students, I'm concerned that the students that are actually leaving this school district, there's a disproportionate number that are minority, and there's a disproportionate number that are ESE. I have the data with me to actually show that. So when we talk about completely relinquishing something that serves the community right now, that's a concern for me. So as an advocate for all students, that is something I'm very concerned about and would want to be able to look at. So when we're looking at what is possible, legally, we don't believe that legally this, by the letter of the statute for turnaround, could be done in that particular manner. I think that you've already discussed that you've put it to a vote with the staff there before. We are firm advocates for both Spook Hill, Mclaughlin, and Roosevelt as being school district schools. We understand that the situation is very unique, and I think that it would be up to the school district and superintendent to have that discussion. But I cannot, it would be remiss without saying that when you look at the number of students that are being exited from the school district, this summer 200 exited. Of those 200, 40% were not proficient. A disproportionate were minorities. When you look at the 200 that you took from the school district, 60% of those were proficient. So again, I just want to make sure that when we're talking about the slides that were presented and the data, what the data actually shows, we need to make sure that we are very clear and transparent with what we have going on and making sure that we're looking after the needs of all students.
All right, thank you very much.
The one thing that I would just comment on that is, obviously, we don't have the benefit of the data that to which you're referring at the moment. Would love the opportunity to have a conversation about that, review the data for ourselves. I make my living on numbers, and not that I don't trust the district's numbers, but I would certainly like to understand them. And again, I'm hoping that the outflow of this forum this evening is a discussion so that we can maybe find a way and answer those exact concerns that you just raised.
I would like to say this. I ran into a student just recently at the grocery store that had been a student at one of our elementary schools, and that particular student was now in middle school. In fact, was attending Mclaughlin Middle School. And so we were talking about the middle school experience. And so I asked, I said, well, so you know that now there's a Bach North and you have an opportunity to be considered for that particular campus. Do you think that you're interested in that? And she looked at me and she said, my principal is Donna Driston. And no, I can't go. I can't go. Donna Driston is my principal. Donna Driston is an outstanding principal. Outstanding. And so that has really nothing to do with the last comment, but it has a lot to do with Donna Driston. Donna Driston. Outstanding.
All right. Thank you very much. There was one other question that was submitted early on. Question. If a charter school does take control of Spook Hill, would that affect current student enrollment? And that was meant for both sides.
I think I would just, again, echo that right now, bringing Spook Hill into the charter is not necessarily the topic. The answer to the question, I think, would be, I don't see how that would affect current enrollment, but again, that's a process that is unlike what we're talking about with Mclaughlin at the moment. Again, that comes down to a process that involves teachers and parents voting, and that's a discussion for a different forum, quite honestly. So I don't want to evade the question, but at the moment it's a moot question and beyond the scope of our forum here.
And just to clarify, just for general information, that when a school converts to charter status, the law requires that there be a preference for those students to return to the school, but it also requires that alternative arrangements for those current students who choose not to attend be made. And so the district's responsibility at that point in time becomes the responsibility to find another school for that child and to transport them to that school. And so that becomes our responsibility and our financial responsibility.
And I'll just add, just for clarification on that, our intent would certainly be that it would not affect any enrolled student that wanted to stay there.
I just wanted to add too, I think we need to not forget the whole issue of choice here, because there are families in Lake Wales who choose not to partake in charter, and that's okay. And I think we need to all make sure we drill down with whatever numbers we have. And what I would love to see, and I've actually asked for this a few times, I would love to see at every, I'm speaking for a high school, and I think it would be important for the middle schools too, what are the achievement levels? It would be interesting to see that, particularly Lake Wales and any school that our kids may be, their opt-out school. What are the achievement levels of each of those schools? I think buried in those numbers, really important information. And I just think that would be very helpful, along with the other that you were talking about, Dr. Riggs. I think that would be helpful to disaggregate as we're working through this.
There was a comment again made about minority students and ESC students relative to Lake Wales, and that several, I want to say 200, what was the number, Dr.
During this past summer, there were 200 students that exited the district, the Lake Wales Charter School district.
And I would imagine there were probably some that exited Polk County schools as well, but that's not important. But what is important is this. We were looking at some data relative to the students that we have in our system as they ended the 17-18 school year. And one group that was noted was the ESC population. And so I would like to share this information with you regarding the students that are in our ESC population. The ESC graduation rate for 2017-18, Lake Wales High School, is 95.2%, as compared to 4 years ago when it was 60%. The ESC population, the graduates, Lake Wales High School last spring, 95.2%. 4 years ago, that number was 60%. The African American graduation rate for 17-18 was or is 94.7%. 94.7%. And the Hispanic population, graduation rate for Lake Wales High School during that same time, 87.9%. I would say that for the kids that graduate from Lake Wales High School, and again, these are minority students, they apparently are doing pretty well in terms of staying the course. Now, I would also say that the minority population at Lake Wales High School is about 50% of the entire student population. So I'm not talking about a small portion of students. I'm talking about 50% of the entire high school population of minority students, and their graduation rate is around the 90th percentile. And you're not going to find that in a lot of places in our state. So that really is
Mr. Wilson was first.
I'm concerned about the kind of the back and forth here because it sounds like more of a debate than it is an opportunity to try and work together towards something. while we're on the subject of those numbers, I think it's important to realize that the better the Lake Wales schools are, the better the county schools are. And we are 15% of the enrollment of Polk County. The better we do, the better Polk County does. And an example of that is Polk County has achieved a very fine graduation rate across the county of 80%, which is a nice step up and is to be commended. During that same period of time, the Lake Wales High School moved from 60% graduation rate to its present graduation rate of, and this is across the board, everybody. Jesse was talking about segments, but this is across the board, 92.2%. Now, that 92.2% is in the Polk County figures. And that 92.2% has helped Polk County achieve that 80%. So we ought to be thinking about working together, it seems to me, for our common benefit. And just as a side comment, the state average is 82.3% graduation rate. And Lake Wales, with 50% minority Title I school, is at 92.2%, which helps elevate the county. And, you know, I'd like to see us look for ways to work together. The county serves the community of Lake Wales. Charter schools serve the community of Lake Wales. And I think the real issue is, or should be, aside from the adults and what they're worried about, what reflection it may have on this one or that one or the other, what's the best for Lake Wales and for their students? We both serve that community. And the direction this is taking concerns me.
Mr. Wilson, you have a statement that you wanted to make, and after you make that statement, we need to move on because I've got a number of questions still waiting.
Thank you, Mayor Foltz. And I concur with Mr. Gibson. That's essentially what I wanted to address as well. But very quickly, I want to recognize my colleagues on the school board who are here this evening. It's a very important conversation, and I appreciate them coming out and hearing this conversation, as I know all of you too. Lisa Miller, Sarah Fortney, Billy Townsend, Lori Cunningham, and I know I saw Kay Fields come in as well. Sarah Beth Reynolds wasn't able to join us this evening. I'd like to frame this issue a little bit differently. We brought in Superintendent Byrd because of her exemplary background in turning around schools. And it's understandable that she and her staff are going to be focused in every possible way on turning around any of our schools that are struggling. I think we should expect that. Unfortunately, we have a competitive environment between the school district and Lake Wales Charter School that isn't working. It's not serving our students. It's not serving our communities here. It's not serving the Lake Wales community fully. It's not serving the Winter Haven community fully. It's not serving the Frostproof community fully. And by the way, I should offer this. Our board has not weighed in on this, and individual board members have, but the board as a whole has not weighed in on this. So I do not speak for the board. I'm just speaking as one board member. I think that it's an unhealthy competition that we, as Mr. Gibson said, have to work together to find a solution for. Whatever that solution is, I would hope that we could take a tone and a position that would be one of working together to find solutions for these kids, because it's, I I do agree with Mr. Nelson in his statement that I see the situation continuing to deteriorate if we don't work together to find a solution, whatever that solution might be. So I would hope that we could focus more on offering a way forward, whether it's bringing Mclaughlin into the Lake Wales Charter School District, or keeping Mclaughlin and having Lake Wales work with the school district, whatever that might be. Thank you, Mayor Foltz.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate it. Our next question, and this is meant for both parties. How would Polk County schools and the Lake Wales Charter Schools feel about making Mclaughlin a 6 through 12 school of the arts, such as, for example, Harrison? And that would be for this side of the county. How would you feel about making Mclaughlin a 6 through 12 school of the arts for this side of the county, similar to Harrison?
Great idea.
All right. Next question. All right, next question. Are charter schools accredited as public schools must be?
Absolutely. Yes, very much so.
All right, thank you very much.
In fact, I brought my school grading formulas for high schools, for middle schools, for elementary schools, really to make a very simple point. It really doesn't matter what your school name is. You got to pass through this, bottom line.
All right. Thank you. Next question. What is the student-to-teacher ratio at Mclaughlin and at charters? Student-teacher ratio at Mclaughlin now as it stands under Polk County, and what is the ratio of student-to-teacher in the charters now as it stands?
Thank you. Right now at Mclaughlin, we have support in those classrooms, and with those classrooms, you're looking at like a 1 to 20, 22, 24. Some of those classrooms actually break down smaller, where we have support going into those classrooms for those students and those teachers. So we do break it down. I also want to say that while we're talking about Mclaughlin, you know, their school rating this past year was 38 percentage points when you need the 41 for them to make the letter grade of a C. What we see that's happening in there right now is we look at their mid-year data points and looking at everything. They have improved where they were this time last year. They have shown improvement in Mclaughlin with their subject areas.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, absolutely.
Just thinking in the spirit of this, and Lynn Wilson said this at one board meeting, which I thought this was profound. He said, we should step aside and look at this not just contingent upon school grade. This is about a community that wants to be one community in terms of looking at our economic development, in terms of looking at the students going from elementary to high school, and have a continuity with the culture of the schools, the approach that we take, and the autonomy that the educators have. And I know in education we spend a lot of money going out, bringing in experts out of experts after experts. And the people, we try that, doesn't work. Well, there's someone else with a new idea. What I happen, and this is me personally, to love about charter is the autonomy that it gives educators. So this isn't about the grade at Mclaughlin. This is about hoping that in Lake Wales we can have a full system where we cut the educators loose. We go out and find the best schools and what they are doing, and then we bring it back. Some of these schools we go to visit that are the high-performing schools around the country, they don't charge us a thing for going there to look at what best practice is. And if you do a little research, and I'm not saying I know the research is done across the board in this county, but if you go find the best practice, and then you come back and you have educators collaborate, and you have someone like a Donna Dresden there, cut loose from the shackles that can be cumbersome, not not making decisions and moving like a jet ski. But if you're in a larger bureaucracy, we all know that it takes a little longer. No offense to a large bureaucracy, but it does take a little longer because just it's the whole thing about scale. So maybe we shift the conversation with what that school graded. It's either good for this community to be a whole system in terms of the culture and the approach of how we treat the children of this community, and see what happens if we can leverage that energy. I think we'd blow it out of the water as a community of Lake Wales. It's not about the school grade. It's about giving educators the autonomy to do what we know they can do if we really believe in it. And it's all about the kids. Robin Gibson laughs when people say that. It's all about the kids. It's usually all about the adults. So I say let's try to at least cut this loose and see what happens. It doesn't matter what the school grade is. It matters what we could do as a community.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dunson. Yes, we still have the ratio question for charter. Okay.
I would like to add to that what Donna just said, because really it's about that teacher in that classroom, who that teacher is, what that teacher's passions are for those children, and the relationship between that teacher and those students. You could do a lot of things. You could have a lot of programs. You could wish and think, but that relationship between the teacher and those students is really what makes that magic happen. It's nothing else but that. And having passionate people that are endeared to whatever kind of children that they have in front of them, that's going to make that difference for that's what's making a difference now for us, and it'll make a difference anywhere. Anywhere you go, it's about the relationship between that teacher and those students, those teachers and those students, and the passion that that person has for that relationship that's shared. And there's nothing that we can do or say that's going to get around that. Now, I say that because when you have a conversation like this, people want to dance around some of the obvious things. What are some of the obvious things, Jesse? Well, if the teachers aren't right for those students, the success is not going to be there. I'm just saying, if that teacher is not right for the students, you're not going to have a successful classroom, period. Really doesn't matter what you think and feel about it, but that's how simple it is. And so you got to nurture those teachers, support those teachers. You got to help those teachers. You got to get the interference, run it for those teachers so that they can be successful. If there's fear and trepidation within that school culture environment, those teachers aren't going to be effective. You got to get that out. Those teachers have to feel like their mission is their mission, and the stuff is not their mission. The stuff, the stuff.
Okay, the teacher-student ratio. Okay.
That was just my commercial for him to get that information.
I'm informed that it's 21.3 to 1. I don't know how you get a 0.3 student. Yes, and roughly the same, I understand. Damien, do you have Bach? I'm sorry? 1 to 22? Okay, so roughly in line. It sounds to me like it's all about the same. Yep.
Pretty close to the same. All right, thank you very much. Moving right along, this is for both school systems as well. Are teachers hired for charter school state-certified teachers? And I mean, that could be answered by either side.
Yes.
Or both sides. Yes, from both sides. Okay. Thank you very much. Next question. What do faculty, staff, parents, and students have to say about the issue, about Mclaughlin?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
I'm happy to invite people to have a forum at the high school students. I think that would be wonderful. You can come 10 o'clock either Monday or Thursday any week.
Yes, Superintendent Byrd.
I will tell you that we did speak with the teachers of Mclaughlin at the beginning of this year, the end of last year. And at that time, those teachers told us that they were happy with Mclaughlin being a part of Polk County Public School.
All right, thank you. And I think that was probably one of the concerns that some of the people here had as to whether they would have any voice at all in this. Next question. Why is the City Commission involved in this decision? I can answer that one. We're not. We are not. It's between the entities that are here at this table that will be making that decision. And if you would like to elaborate on that, you may. Okay.
The decision is between the two boards. Period. They're the only people that have the authority to contract.
All right. Thank you.
But I'll say this.
Go right ahead.
It really doesn't matter what municipality that you're talking about. There should always be a concern about the quality of your schools within that confine, because that's going to affect your economics. If you're not concerned, if I'm a city commissioner and I'm not concerned about the quality of my schools, then I'm not really concerned about the economics of that community, because one is related to the other. You can't really get away from that. And so there should be a passion, not just a concern, a passion for making sure that we have the very best, every municipality, not just Lake Wales, but any municipality. People see us as really being a unique entity because the community itself generated what exists now as far as schooling. But every community should have that same passion, because they should be concerned about the vibrance of that community itself there. And there's such a relationship between your schooling and how healthy economically you are.
Okay, concern is there from the commission, but we don't make the decision. Right. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add that when a school is looking at the conversion charter, it's going to be the vote of the teachers and the parents in that school.
All right, thank you very much. And I think that's probably how it started to begin with, right? That every teacher, every parent, and the students had input as to whether they would go to a charter or not. And that has not changed, right?
It has not changed. They have to take the vote.
All right, thank you very much. Moving right along, how will newly arrived midterm students be enrolled if this goes forward?
We're enrolling students right now to come in. And again, for all of us, it's space available. It's with the waiting list, but we've been taking students in right now. If it's mid-year and we have space, they can enter, absolutely.
Well, we're talking about a greater capacity.
Right.
So there'd be no problem at all, actually, because you mentioned 600 students or 900 students. There'll be lots of capacity for that. And by the way, if we had homeless or military, active military, you have those that you have to accommodate as well. But we would have lots of capacity.
Next question. Can all current students be automatically enrolled?
That's up to the...
Yeah, that's the question. I'm reading it exactly the way it came in. So you may respond to that if you wish.
Just real quickly, the way that charter school statute talks about enrollment is, first of all, it's a choice. I think Donna mentioned that we have to acknowledge that charter is a form of choice, so students apply to attend. You can certainly do lots of things to make that application process simple, to make sure that when you first convert a school that those students have a preference. And just like the language that we have in the Bach North with the enrollment preference, you can put that in as a contract amendment in every one of your schools so that the people who live in Lake Wales have the first preference to come to the school. We have schools that hold, conversion charter schools that hold space in their caps. In other words, let's say they could enroll 200 students this year. They only enroll 150 at the beginning of the year so that they can hold those remaining 50 seats so that as students move into a community and it's mid-year, because they have a preference that's in their contract, then that would allow those students who live within Lake Wales to access that preference and be able to attend that school. But you have to take that action up front as you do the enrollment process.
All right. Thank you very much.
But I will say this, enrollment affects the budget and the finance of the school itself. For a conversion school, it's a lot simpler to do that than for a startup, because a startup is not only addressing academic issues, but it's also paying for a facility for those children. And a conversion school, you don't have to worry about that issue.
I think as Ms. Bridges was talking about, there's only one thing to add, and that is that under the law, a conversion charter school. Now, a conversion charter school is one that was previously managed by the district, and now it's managed by a charter board. In our case, it's our local board. A conversion charter school has the legal obligation to take any student that lives in the attendance zone of that school as that attendance zone existed before it converted to charter status. All of our schools, except for the Bach schools, are conversion schools. So by law, we take them, we want them. And the contract, as Ms. Bridges was talking about, that we entered into with the district on Bach North was that every kid living in the Lake Wales attendance zone, which is defined, we would have the contractual obligation to take them. We now have, with the addition of Bach North, we now have the capacity to do that. We didn't have it with Bach Academy. We didn't have enough seats. Now we do. So that's pretty well mandatory that we take all kids in Lake Wales, and we want them.
All right. Thank you, sir. Next question. Why was this meeting not announced on the city website? I'm going to put our city clerk on the spot and let her answer that.
It was on the website and it's on the calendar page as well, and it was on our social media.
It was on the website, it was on the social media, it was also on radio, it was on television this morning, because I saw it. A Tampa station actually announced this forum this evening. So I think it was well announced for anyone to know that it was taking place that's actually wanting to know what's happening in their city. Okay, and that question I think has been answered, and that's all the questions I've got, but I think there's some that were specific for the charter schools for them to answer.
Okay. Lake Wales Elementary Charter School elementary students have to apply to Bach, and Bach students have to apply to Lake Wales High School. Yes, and I think Carolyn will attest to this. That's state law, right, Carolyn? They have to apply.
Yeah, that is part of the process.
And it said, will this practice continue if the MOU is signed? So, yes.
And the one that I have in front of me has to do with the fine arts programs being affected at Mclaughlin if becomes a part of the charter. And we just love the fact that Mclaughlin is an arts school. We, again, relative to the character and the nature of Mclaughlin, especially as it relates to the arts, I mean, we want nothing more, would want nothing more than to support that and see it flourish. And then I have the one that came in during the city commission meeting. Ready, the questions?
The
yep.
ones that were on your
right.
PowerPoint. And I think while he was doing the PowerPoint, if you did not see the question that you asked during the city commission meeting, I think he's going to go back and point those out now and make sure that they have been answered for you.
So a couple of months ago, when we presented our request for a resolution from the city commission, there were a number of questions, concerns that were raised, and I just want to go through those. It will not take but a few moments. The first of those, is it true that a student has to take a test before being admitted to a charter school? No, it is not. It's against the law. It doesn't happen. We don't do it. Is it true that the charter system has shipped out Lake Wales students to out-of-town schools? No. The charter system has never assigned students to an out-of-town school nor transported students outside of Lake Wales. Our buses only bring students to our charter schools. Next slide, please. Have some out-of-town students been admitted to Polk Academy while Lake Wales students were denied entrance? Yes, it has happened in the past. That's part of the reason that we're here this evening. It's also part of the reason that Angela Polito, who is a very capable attorney and a member of our board, recently spearheaded a committee that reviewed our enrollment policies. Those enrollment policies, as a result of that effort, have now been amended. We also amended those policies in conjunction with conversations with the district. Another question came up about the high school, the enrollment period. The district asked us to see if we couldn't align our enrollment periods with theirs. We've done what we can to accommodate that, so I think we mirror the enrollment period now. Again, the answer to the question is yes, it has happened in the past.
But there's a reason for happening.
There are a lot of reasons, but
Right.
the reasons we're not. That's at this point. With all due respect to everybody in the room, at this point, the past is the past. We're trying to find a way forward. There was nothing untoward about why that happened. It happened quite appropriately under the circumstances. But obviously, if you go back again to our mission statement, originally we want to bring education the best we can to our community. Defined by those boundaries, that was the mission statement. In no way am I trying to imply that there was anything that was done underhandedly in any way in that regard. But again, what has happened. We're trying to move forward and find solutions for that. And the district is a key to that. They have helped us in that they approved the Bach North Charter. With more capacity, the potential for Lake Wales students not being accepted into Lake Wales schools is mitigated. And in fact, now our contract with the district relative to Bach North even mandates that all Lake Wales applications have preference over anybody from outside of Lake Wales. And we have also agreed that the language that is part of the Bach North Charter will be amended into the Bach Academy Charter. And that's how we know that it will not happen again. I just answered that part. The district approved application for Bach North, and again was on the condition that Lake Wales students would have priority over out-of-town students. Next slide, please. How do we know that the Bach schools won't slide back into what was done before and displace Lake Wales students for students from out of town? The Lake Wales first requirement is now written into the charter contract and can be enforced in a court of law. It's not just a promise. If Mclaughlin merges with Bach North and becomes part of the Lake Wales charter system, what protection will the Mclaughlin teachers and other employees have for job security? Personnel decisions will remain in the hands of the principal. Next question, please. Who will be the principal of the merged school? Dr. Jackson has committed to offering the position of principal of the merged school to the present principal of Mclaughlin, Miss Donna Drisdom, and I think everybody in this room has affection for Miss Donna Drisdom and understands that. I would put a footnote here. There's nothing inappropriate about this. No offer has been made. No offer has been asked. We just want the community to know
that if this were to happen, the lady who is there is the right person for the job, regardless under whose school system she works. And she is extremely faithful to the district. She is appropriately supportive of the district, and everybody appreciates your integrity, ma'am. If Mclaughlin comes into the charter system, would it receive additional resources to improve the school? The answer is yes, very potentially it would. And I went over those numbers just a little bit ago. If Mclaughlin comes, and again, to be spent at the discretion of the principal, by the way. That goes to the autonomy that Donna was talking about early. The principals of the charter schools are the CEOs of those schools. They manage and they are responsible for their own budgets. Would the district realize a savings? Again, I don't know exactly what the savings is, but if they no longer were paying educational directions for their involvement with Mclaughlin, whatever that is would be the savings that the district would realize. Next slide, please. If Mclaughlin becomes part of the charter system, could Spook Hill and Roosevelt also be included? I think we've pretty well covered that. They certainly could if they chose to. As Ms. Bird indicated, it's another forum. Some have said that all Lake Wales charter schools wants is to have access to the Mclaughlin facility. The charter school's only mission is clear: bring the best in public education to the community. Mclaughlin facility is presently underutilized. I think there are 1,100 and some odd seats capacity in that school, and about half or maybe a little less of those are actually being used. It's a tremendous facility, and half of it is being used. What kind of a marriage could be made there? The charter schools via the foundation and the federal startup funds, again, would potentially be able to bring $1.8 million over 3 years to enhance Mclaughlin. Earmarked for Mclaughlin. Next slide, please. What will happen if Mclaughlin does not come into the charter system and the situation remains the same? The Lake Wales attendance zone will continue with 3 instead of 2 middle schools, with seats for approximately 900 more middle school students than presently reside in Lake Wales. Students from out of town will have the right to be admitted to occupy those seats, thereby exacerbating the issues that have plagued the district and the Lake Wales charter schools to this point. So here again, it boils down to what Mr. Wilson referred to as unhealthy competition, but what any good capitalist would refer to as very healthy competition. And how do you find common ground there? That's what this really boils down to. If Mclaughlin does not come into our charter, quite honestly, our incentive will be to be as successful as we possibly can in attracting as many students as we can. And I think that's the last one.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
And although those questions were answered, that sounded like a closing statement coming from the charter school side, so I'm going to allow a closing statement coming from the Polk County side.
Thank you, Mayor Foltz. I was introduced as the board chair, but probably my role here more appropriately as the school board is as a school board member representing District 6. My district includes Lake Wales, Frostproof, Eagle Lake, and parts of Winter Haven. And I tried to frame this a little differently. This is a significant, what we have happening right now is a significant difference. I hear from those communities all the time. It's this, while I am indeed a capitalist, this particular competition isn't helping. I hear from the Winter Haven community, I hear from the Lake Wales community, Eagle Lake, and Lake Wales, and there are a lot of challenges that we face because of what's happened. And I want to go back to what Mr. Nelson said earlier. We've got to find a way to put the past behind. However we got here, we're here. And I think we need to work together to find a path forward. I'm going to reiterate that the superintendent's position will be turning around Mclaughlin, because that's what we as a school board expect her to do. She's going to focus on that, and her staff are going to focus on that fully and completely. But that doesn't address the core issue that we have with our surrounding communities. And I think we have to find a way to address that by working together. So I appreciate Mr. Nelson's willingness as chair of the Lake Wales charter school system to reach out to us and reach out to me, and for us to begin working together to find a solution, whatever that solution might be. But I think, as I've listened to this afternoon, and I appreciate this conversation so much and these questions so much, just as, again, as the representative from District 6, I appreciate the fact that we're trying to work together on it, but it's a very serious matter, and I think we're going to have to make an extra effort to find a way forward to serve those communities and those students. Thank you, Mayor Foltz.
All right, thank you, sir. I hope that the information that you gathered this evening from the banter and from the presentation has helped you understand a bit better as to what's going on, and now you have informed ideas that you can actually work with now, instead of innuendo that many people are still trying to push. So hopefully this has been helpful. And I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists for being here this evening, and our distinguished guests that are here, because I think I see a number of Polk County School Board members that are here. And that means a lot to know that you guys are here and you're hearing what's taking place. And thank you for the Charter School Board members and leadership for being here as well. So hopefully we'll all walk out of here with a bit more knowledge than we came in with. And we have nothing else at this point? Yes, sir.
Tuesday night, the resolution is on the agenda.
Say again?
Tuesday night's commission meeting, the resolution.
Oh, yes. Even though you didn't have a chance to speak here tonight, there was a microphone sitting in front of you. If there's something that you would wish to express about this whole situation that's taking place, you may do so Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. at City Hall at the City Commission meeting. And you will be allowed to speak during communications and petitions.
It's on the agenda. The resolution is on the agenda. It's an agenda item.
Oh, yes. And you'll be able to speak when we get to that agenda item. If I do it at communications and petitions, that probably would be a bit premature. But when we get to that agenda item, then it will be opened up for you to come forward and speak on that particular issue. And the thing that would be coming back before the commission would be the same thing that brought this forum about, whether any letter of support would go out to the charter school board as far as supporting Mclaughlin coming into the charter school system. That will be the only thing that we'll be discussing, not whether they should join or not, but whether a letter of support would be issued or not. So if you have anything that you'd like to express at that time, please join us on Tuesday, 6 p.m., Lake Wales City Hall.
You might want to recognize the city commissioners all over here.
Yes, and we do have all of us are here, actually, because we've got Commissioner Curtis Gibson, Commissioner Terry Howell, Commissioner Tanya Stewart, and also Commissioner Robin Gibson that's sitting up here. But please forgive me, that was just a... Oh, no, we won't be voting on any of that was talked about up here today. But I think that I know I'm walking out of here with a bit more knowledge than I came in with, and I hope you are too. And if there's nothing else to be expressed at this time, thank you again, Superintendent Byrd, for being here, Superintendent Jackson, and all of our dignitaries. And and totally thank you to Vanguard. Thank you, Dr. Moretti, because this is something that a venue that I think is to be desired. Go consider yourselves adjourned. Thank you.